Welcome again to our channel Elimika Mtandaoni. We are proceeding with the series of videos on open source software adoption for healthcare organizations, and this one is the last but not the last. There is one to come. We will talk about software adoption. Speaking of software adoption, it means that this is the transfer or conversion between an old system and a target system in an organization. So if an organization marks with it has an old system, it reaches a point that it doesn't want to use that system and it wants to use a new system. Speaking of old system, could be a computer system or it can be a manual system. So an organization can decide to move from manual system to a computerized system, or from an old version system to a new system. So an organization may want to use a new system which is more efficient, or it has more work capacity, etc. So then a new system needs to be adopted, after which it can be used by users. There are several adoption strategies. There are several adoption strategies that can be used to implement a system in an organization. We have some adoption strategies like parallel adoption, phased adoption, etc. The use of free software instead of proprietary software can give healthcare organizations or any other organizations a better control over information technology. Therefore, there is a growing number of public institutions such as healthcare organizations that have started a transition to a free software solution. So adoption of an open source software for healthcare organization is an important thing to do for organizations, and you as open source specialist or health information system specialist, you have to equip yourself with a lot of knowledges so that you can go there to healthcare organizations and convince them to adopt open source solutions so that they can efficiently operate their functionalities. There are a number of ways of which a healthcare organization can benefit from adopting open source solution. One among the ways of which that organization can benefit is reduce the cost and simplify the solution. As we know that open source software affordable alternative. So when healthcare organizations move to open source solution, then they effectively eliminate the vendor lock-in associated with commercial software. So users of open source software technologies are not tied to long-term contracts, or they are not tied to limited feature sets. So there is reduced the cost, and there is a simplified solution. Another way is the direct access to customizable code. There is the ability to customize code enables more agile and effective progress. And these open source software technologies are extendable and can be reused. They are reusable. With direct access to open source code, these users of open source software have the flexibility to evaluate and to adopt software and systems as they are needed. Another way from which healthcare organization can benefit from adopting open source software solutions is accelerated innovations. As we know that innovation drives change, but companies that adopt open source software solutions, these are able to rapidly scale, they are able to evolve, and they can extend their existing technology stacks and their existing systems, as opposed to those organizations that they decide to start from scratch with each new innovation. So this kind of bootstrapping enables these healthcare organizations to take their digital innovation to market very faster as compared to development from scratch. And in that case, they significantly reduce the accumulation of technological debt to their users. The fourth way is improved interoperability. Uh, in this case, we say that open source software is designed based on open standards. And if that is the case, then this kind of development of this kind of design then foster compatibility with other standards based on the systems and technologies that exist. So with open source software, there is efficiencies that can be gained from the ability to connect and share data across different proprietary software solutions, and it is made possible. So with these open source software capabilities, then it is possible to share data between the open source software and even the proprietary software. The last way of which healthcare organization can benefit from adopting open source software solutions is the superiority of code quality and the security that is provided by open source software solutions. As we know that open source software solutions give access to vast and growing community of skilled programmers. A lot of programmers, they can engage in developing an open source software, and they have a lot of expertise that can drive technological transformation of open source software. So this kind of dedicated open source software community then ensures rugged around the clock scrutiny and identify and eliminate any kind of security threats that may appear, bugs or flaws that may evolve in the open source software. And in that case, they make the open source technologies to mature more and more. So those are the ways from which healthcare organizations can benefit from open source software. But despite the benefits that we have identified, still there are some barriers or there are some resistances that restrict open source software from being adopted in healthcare organizations. This is especially in developing countries. Then what are these barriers? One among the barrier is a lack of IT resources and expertise. The expertise and IT resources that are needed in the open source software development include those people that are needed for evaluation, for evaluating the implication of terms and conditions, the people who know the public, the licenses that the products, the open source software products are distributed under. So as you as health information system specialist, you are equipped with that knowledge, then you are the one that is expected to go out there and change the views of different stakeholders on the open source software. So this barrier of lack of internal IT resource and expertise, then you as an expert now, you have been equipped with a number of knowledge that will help you to explain the implication of the terms and conditions of the open source licenses that the products are distributed under. And some other expertise that is needed are expertise on analysis and evaluation of costs and benefits that relate to open source software. And another expertise that is needed is expertise in ensuring the support and maintenance of a product once it is implemented. All these expertise are given to health information system specialists. Another barrier is internal and external political pressure. Speaking of internal pressure, at the ministerial level, there are those people we call decision makers who have some projects with the commercial software vendors. And in that case, when they communicate with those software vendors, then they are told that the project will be at risk if the health delivery organization decide to move to open source software projects. Another external pressure is from a general population regarding the priorities for the use of healthcare fund. So as we know that healthcare fund has a number of users, so some people might come up, especially politicians may come out and say, why do you use the public fund for such information systems that in the end will die? Another barrier is the lack of reliable information about open source software products. People are not aware of the benefits. People are not aware of how beneficial, how essential open source software could be. So as we know that many software products, they have a certain people that are called the salespersons, where they advertise, they promote their softwares. But for open source softwares, there are no such people to provide information and the references and to arrange product demonstrations. So it becomes the responsibility of the only potential buyer to acquire this kind of information. By doing this, then this increases the search and acquisition cost for the open source solution. So this becomes a barrier. Some other barriers include lack of responsibility third party, and another one include individualistic and competitive culture of people in healthcare organizations. The last barrier talks about hidden cost of open source software. Let me explain about this. There are a number of costs that are associated with the open source software. As we know that open source can be obtained for free, but in some cases then there are some costs that are associated with the training, some costs associated with the maintenance of the software, fixing bugs, or even addressing new requirements. So those are termed as hidden costs. Now let's talk about the open source software customization. When we talk about customization means modifying or building according to individual or personal specifications or preferences. And in fact, when we're talking about software customization, involves writing new code. That means you can write programs, you can write class files, you can write a number of scripts to the software that meets specific requirements. So it differs from a configuration. Most of the people confuse a customization and configuration. In fact, configuration use tools in the application to meet specific requirements without the use of code. It means that there is less effort and less risks. This is because tools that are found within the application are being used to make changes in a way that the application was expressly designed to have changes made. So speaking of configuration, it means that you are not touching the codes, but you just deal with only the external or the settings of the application. And customization of a software depends on the software that is being customized. So we cannot say that there are some steps that we can use to customize a certain software. There are no general steps, but they are specific to a kind of software. For example, if you want to customize OpenMRS, then if you visit their site, then they will provide you steps that you should follow in order to customize OpenMRS. The same with DHIS2, the same with OpenEMR softwares. Downloading open source software. Downloading these softwares is somehow difficult because some people do not know where they can get such software. So there are many websites where somebody can download the open source software solutions. Such websites include SourceForge, Bitbucket, Launchpad, GitHub, ForceHub, FreeCode. We have some other like Black Duck, etc., or Savannah, ForceHub, and so many others. So I thank you very much for following Elimika Mtandaoni. Please subscribe, share with others, let others know that there is a channel called Elimika Mtandaoni found in YouTube. It provides a number of materials, a number of videos that will help to change your life. Stay there, never unsubscribe. A lot is going to come. This is Elimika Mtandaoni and I'm your presenter Agustino Mogos. Thank you very much for following us.